Hey everybody, what's up? It's Hold the Truth Hostage, where if the truth was so important, we wouldn't negotiate with lies. We wouldn't negotiate with lies, we would hold the truth hostage. Now, I want to shout out to Caduceus, shout out to David Little, shout out to Woody, shout out to Iori. We had a dope stream on Battle of the Sexes. You know, in fact, after doing that stream, I think it's gonna become a weekly thing, and it's just gonna be about the battle of the sexes. What's going on between us men and women, and so on. But what I want to cover on this video was the original intent of that battle of the sexes video. A lot of times when we got on a stream, we were having some fun. We stayed on subject, but there's a certain way I want to do it individually. So basically, the battle of the sexes, a lot of people like to think, a lot of people like to think that the battle of the sexes started with feminism in the 19, what is it, 19, no, in the 18, no, yeah, the 19, early 1910s, you know what I'm saying, with how women received the voting rights and so on. But in reality, or some, even the majority of people modernly think it started with, I think 1960s. A lot of people think it started in the 1960s, but in reality, it started far sooner than that. And the majority of people think it all started with women. That women are to blame for the battle of the sexes, that women are the ones to blame for the divide between men and women. You know what I'm saying? That women are the ones who initiated the issues, that women are the ones who started all the problems between men and women. Because the thing is this, a lot of people have short-term memory when it comes to history, so the closer it is to their present day, the more accurate it is. I mean, there's certainly a lot of men that think today that, the whole feminism thing push, some think it really went heavy in the 2010s. Some think it really went heavy in 2000s, the 1990s, 70s, and so on. But in reality, it was none of that. In reality, the whole battle of the sexes started in the 1800s. And, after this video, you'll understand that, you can Google it, but you'll understand that, with critical thinking, that I'm 100% accurate. You know what I mean? This is the whole truth, nothing but the whole truth. Because, we're on a journey of truth. The majority of us here online have never met each other. We don't know each other, whatever, but we do know one thing. We know the whole truth. We know what it is to be on a journey of truth. And that's what I'm sharing with you right now, the journey of truth. That's what we're aligned on. That's what we can agree on. So it all really started, the battle of the sexes. It took me a while to actually, think about this. But the battle of the sexes started really in the 1800s with the Civil War. It started with the Civil War in America. It started with the Civil War in America when the government proved that it was absolutely biased, that its goals came above the national security and the nationwide prosperity between its citizens. You see, the Civil War never had to happen. You see, in 1830, I think it was London or the UK, they basically abolished slavery. In 1830, they prevented and abolished the arrival, the purchase of slaves, and I think by 1845 they ended the ability to actually import slaves. I'm not 100% sure. You could Google it if my time period is wrong. But yeah, so London or United Kingdom, they basically abolished slavery through the government. No war, no battle. They paid some slave owners here and there. They gave the slaves some land here and there. They relocated the slaves, gave them some land, gave them the ability to work. But in America, the federal government saw an opportunity with the Civil War. You know what I mean? They saw an opportunity to forever expand the government. The government in the United States had a real problem with how there was a slower, there was the interaction between men and the government was just too steady, too quick. They wanted a bureaucracy. They wanted to slow down things between the government and men. You know what I'm saying? Those men outside of the government, those men that were citizens, had too much control, too much say-so of the government. They needed a way to forever expand the government. And basically, they needed a way to end the unity between the citizens of the nation. They needed a way where people are so divided that they stand on a political ground before they stand as United States citizens. So they started the Civil War, and the Civil War was the beginning of the battle of the sexes and the bias between men. The anti-male activity. A lot of men today want to claim, the government's after us, the government's done this, the government's really doing this, they're targeting us, they're attacking us, and so on. But the government has never done so much damage than the Civil War. So what the government did is, instead of paying and abolishing slavery, like such as London, my apologies for using the word like, really taking that out of my vocabulary. But such as London, instead of the United States government abolishing slavery, such as London and the United Kingdom did, through payment and through, negotiations and so on, they started a war. And the reason that the Union started a war was that it was really about expanding the government and creating a loop of expansion that we face today, where you have, the Democrats, Republicans polling the public on both sides, for expansion. So they started the Civil War where they forced, and you gotta understand how damaging this was, that brothers in the North had to face their cousins in the South. They had to face their family from other, locations in the country. Because if you had property in the South, and a lot of people like to think, oh, it was just a war for slavery, and, that's a false advertisement. But, the South had rich, fertile land, a lot of farming land in the South. So, it was a war for more than just let's free the people, blah, blah, blah. It was really, think about it, you had land for generations, land since the, 1500s or whatever, and you lost all your land. But let's get back. they force brothers to fight brothers, from the south or the north, man. They forced so many men to attack and fight each other. That the government was that biased. It sacrificed hundreds, maybe I think millions of men were sacrificed. Not only just through the war, but through the fact that they lost land. And after the North won, the North wrote the history. And what happened is those men that fought and those people that fought for the South, they became Southern voters. So they said, you know what? We lost all our property. We lost so much, but you know what? From now on, we will only vote in the South's interest because we need political representation. That's why you saw so much issue. That's why you see so much hanging and so on in the 50s. You know what I mean? The people in the North who made most of these movies like to just say, well, people in the South were hanging blacks and killing them because, they're racist. No, there's more to it than that. It had to do with the Civil War, the level of taintness it left behind. I plan to do a video on that later on. But what it did is, man, all the people in the South that lost their land, their property, they soon started voting for representation. They said, never again will we have a weak political representation. That's why you see a lot of Southern folks voting for their republic, the Republicans, you know what I'm saying? And you see the Northerns voting mostly Democrat. It's why you see a political line, because it's about representation, so they don't have another civil war, because the amount of property loss and lives lost during the Civil War. So a lot of people in the South will vote and seek to expand their political views as a way to protect themselves, because they saw what happened when the North had too much political control, that the North just set off a civil war. You know what I'm saying? So what happens is now you have two sides of the country both spreading their political values and seeking to expand their political representation, which in the long run only expands the government even further. You know what I'm saying? Even if you have Republicans saying, yo, we need less government, but they want more Republicans. So that means you're expanding the government even further. Then you know where the Democrats stand. The Democrats don't want you to do anything without government. So at the end, both ends are expanding the government, but on separate, differing perspectives of how it's being done. The Republicans believe they need more Republicans to have less government, which really is them saying we need less Democrats, and it's to expand ourselves and protect ourselves from a repeat of the Civil War. And then, but in reality, they're expanding the government even further. So at the end of the day, the whole Civil War succeeded, because the Civil War ensured that America would forever be a country of political divide, that two parties would rule over all. That's why that's why we don't have as many differing political parties as you see if you go to London or you go to Europe, they have many political parties. But the reason they have so many political parties is that their citizens never had a civil war. Their citizens never had to choose between two sides, that their citizens are still united when it comes to seeing one another as, European citizens and seeing their nation as a whole. While in America, there's a great divide because there's bloodshed over this divide that was the Civil War. That's why we only have a large two-party system. I mean, there is some people that are libertarians, you know what I'm saying? But the libertarians tend to be very offshoot, offshoot similar to Republicans. They're an offshoot brand. They're more libertarian. They want more freedom, but even them, the way they seek to expand, and the fact that the libertarians, I plan to make a video on the libertarians, man. I once had a libertarian friend, but the way he moved wasn't really libertarian. It was very Republicanish, you know what I mean? But the reason we don't have so many differing parties is that the country's been divided from the Civil War. And the success of the Civil War is that the government is forever expanding. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you see politicians today just speaking to their political party, my Republicans, my Democrats. They don't speak for the American people anymore. That's why you see a conflict. Even if both sides agree on something, they won't support it because they have to have it so that their party thought of it first, that their party's the only party, the only option. You know what I'm saying? It's all due to the Civil War. Now, we're going to fast forward a little. Now, as we fast forward to when the Civil War ended, now after the government started the Civil War, divided the entire country, because at some point the North, the Union in its victory truly had control over the South. You know what I mean? You got to understand, to the victor goes the spoils. To the victor, they wrote history. They decided, they started running the South. You know what I mean? So to the victor goes the spoils. So now the government, after a successful campaign of the Civil War, the government said, you know what? We sent these men to war. We basically proved how much of a bias we are and how far we'll go to expand the government. So now it's time to further expand the government's control and limit these men. So around I don't remember when right now, but around it might have been 1870. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember, but 1870 or 1830, I'm not sure. You could Google it, but the American government ends prostitution. Now, they end prostitution. And what they do by ending prostitution is that they limit a man's sexual options. They limit a man's sexual option. And this is where the government started to, you could say this is pre-femininity, pre-feminism. You know what I'm saying? Or as Google, can't say that, pre-effinism, whatever, pre-effinism, we'll just say that. Pre-effinism is the government ends prostitution. Now, prostitution has always been an aspect of civilization. And, shout out to Caduceus. What prostitution did is it allowed a man, not only a man, but I'm going to focus on the men right now. It allowed the men to, if they were far away from, let's say their wives. If they were far away from their wives, they would still be able to have access to sexual experiences. You know what I'm saying? And that would relieve the burden and stress of not being near their wives, or if they didn't want to sleep with their wives, they would have access to another woman and still be able to come home. And the thing that prostitution did, and it took me a while to realize this, but prostitution was the cornerstone of a family. It really helped maintain families because a lot of the women that didn't want to be prostitutes or their families didn't want them to be prostitutes would have to teach them off-bed skills, you know what I mean? Off-bed skills of cooking, cleaning, basically a woman proving that she has more value to offer a man than just her sexuality. So prostitution played a very important role in ensuring that women knew how to cook, clean, take care of their children, and be mothering, being wholesome and caring, because they had competition with prostitution for a man's attention. Now, men would at those times would not marry, they wouldn't marry prostitutes. They would just have fun with them, sleep, give them some money, and leave. So the women had to, with prostitution being available, had to work in the home. They had to prove that they had value beyond sex. So it kept a lot of women more wholesome. You know what I'm saying? Prostitution. Prostitution, like even if you look at, for example, Mexico, where prostitution is legal, the families are far stronger in Mexico. You know, the way they stick together, because the women over there understand that, you know, they have to prove that they have more to offer than sexuality, and that the men over there have the option to sleep around as they should. In fact, it's not an option. They have the freedom. Let me repeat that. The men have the freedom to sleep around with prostitutes. So the women that are at their home, their wives, have to behave. You know what I mean? They have to have a value beyond the bed, you know. So another thing is that what prostitution did, shout out to Caduceus, is that prostitution, most of those brothels were run by women. The women were the ones running the brothels and the businesses. You know, a lot of those women that were, you know, the brothels were run by women. So there were many female entrepreneurs that ran brothels, you know, ran those businesses and made their money. And, you know, men also ran them. Because here's the thing, not every man wants to be a father. Not every woman wants to be a mother. You know what I'm saying? Though, you know, though that can be somewhat altered, can be, you know, when it comes to women, it's a little shaky when it comes to the mothering aspect, because for them it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, a limited time window. So women wanting to have children is far different than men, as we men can just keep having kids no matter what, you know, shooting a seed as long as you don't shoot any blanks, you know. But what happened is a lot of the women back then had the freedom to run a brothel. And there were some women, when they were just new to a country, new to a location, they'd probably work a brothel before they got established. And the other thing is, the women that, as they got older and could no longer work the brothel, they became madams. You know, they became madams and started running the brothel. So there was a work-related aspect to it. And the brothels allowed women more opportunity and allowed men that didn't want to. You gotta think about the men that didn't want to start families or you know, have any long-term relationships. They didn't have to potentially interact with women that wanted that. A man could just keep going to the brothels, you know, day and night every year until the day he died, you know, and you would never have any interaction where a woman was left scarred, or, you know, she wanted a long-term relationship and the man she was with, she thought he was seeking the same thing when he just wanted to sleep around. So there was not that many interactions where a man and a woman would interact if there wasn't a goal for a long-term relationship. Because you gotta remember, back then, fathers would arrange marriages to arrange a man to marrying their daughter, or they would outright, I think, even sell the rights to marrying their daughter, because the fathers back then were responsible for taking care of their daughters. So they would want to, you know, give that responsibility to another man. That's why you had arranged marriages back then were very, very prevalent. And you had fathers, after, vetting and looking at a man, they would offer their daughter for marriage, even for resources. You know what I'm saying? They'd offer their daughter's hand in marriage for resources, land, and so on. But they would give her to someone that could take care of her, you know. And the other thing is with prostitution, like I said, prostitution offered a lack of deception, because both men and women didn't have to interact with each other with the pretense of a long-term relationship, because brothels were ever available and ever present. So you had far less conflict between the sexes. You had far more respect, because the men could get what they want sexually, and the women didn't have to interact with a man unless it was long term. So there was a lot of stronger families, healthier relationships back then. Now, another thing before I go further is that, right now in today's age, they're pushing love and all that BS, which had to do with, consumerism. Later on I'll cover. But back then in, the 1800s, let's say 1800s, early 1800s, let's say 1700s, when you had prostitution, you had a man had the ability. If you check out my video, MLS, Male Limitation Society, I dive deeper into it. But because men back then could had access to brothels, men had the ability to satisfy their sexual appetite, and satisfy their sexual appetite. So there was far less sexual frustration for men, So even if a man had a wife, he could satisfy his sexual appetite by going to the brothel. Then he could come back to his wife, be sexually active with her without any hint of regret or a feeling that he's limited, So he could always be at his peak of interest, because some men, their peak, their sexual limitation is more than one woman. Or some men, their peak is one woman, but they need more sexual access when they can't have access to their wife or their long-term girlfriend, whatever. You know what I mean? So you gotta understand that, Now, let's fast forward to another law that was introduced. Now, after they made prostitution illegal, they made polygamy illegal. And the government did this to further set up their eventual voter, the women, their eventual number one support system, the women. So they made polygamy illegal. And the reason they made polygamy illegal, I'm going to go further into that later, but here's the side effects of polygamy on both men and women. And it actually hurts. The fact that polygamy is illegal hurts far more women than it hurts men. Because when they abolished polygamy, I think it was 1890, they made polygamy illegal. A man wasn't allowed to have multiple wives, multiple wives. A man wasn't allowed that. So What happens when you don't have legal polygamy nationwide is the women suffer the most on this because less women will experience motherhood. Less women will experience motherhood. And I'm going to go deeper into a genetic level too. So less women get to experience motherhood, and what this creates is a competition to where women are competing against one another for access to one man. You know what I mean? And the thing is, men naturally, especially back then, men naturally die more. Men were working far more dangerous jobs, in the mines, building train tracks, especially the mines where men were getting black lung, where their lungs were so filled with dust and tar that they were dying. And, men back then died even more. Even more men died back then with harsh jobs and so on. So you have to understand that now one woman, when you end polygamy, when you make polygamy illegal by the government, when the government makes polygamy illegal, they basically end a woman's ability, end multiple women's ability to have access to a man that would provide them the opportunity, when you make polygamy illegal, you end the prospects of women experiencing motherhood because you've made it that it's only one man, one woman, when in reality, it should be that man should be allowed to have as many women as he can physically help, as many women as he can physically protect and provide for. And it also allows as many, because what they do when they demonize polygamy, they make it seem like it's a man's thing. Only a man can, activate or seek it out. But in reality, what happens with polygamy is women that would see another woman living a good life, having a respectable man, they could join that relationship. They could now become the second wife or, another wife to him. And they could befriend that woman and have access to a long-term sisterhood that is, long-term friendship between them and another. Yeah, they could be sister wives, long-term friendship and trust with a woman that they both share the child with the same man. So there was a deep friendship, because a gift that a man can give to a woman is her best friend, or a woman she could count on, and that's the ability to impregnate multiple women. You know what I'm saying? And men have been doing this since the beginning of our race, And what happens is you have multiple women sharing one man. And what happens is less women were not mothers. Less women were living alone. And for the men that were taking care of these women, when, taking care of their daughters, they could ensure that their daughters could be moved out of the home so they can eventually retire, as they didn't need to take care of their daughters anymore or worry about their daughters, and they could have their daughters marry a man, and, be with this man. So it really, the elimination of polygamy really hurt a lot of women access to being and becoming a mother in a stable relationship with multiple women, when they made it illegal. You know what I'm saying? And it's very different than, Because I know some people watching are saying, well, what about baby mamas today? No, that's different. That's a point of chaos, and I'll cover that later on. But the thing is, polygamy helped a lot of women and ensured more women would get married or have a husband or a man in their life and experience being a mother. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing it did from a genetical level is that stronger, healthier men could pass on their genes to far more women. So that actually meant that we would have a far healthier population. You know what I'm saying? Because a strong and healthier man could actually reproduce with far more women. So it basically meant we would have far stronger, far healthier men in the population because a strong man wasn't limited to just one woman to pass on his genes. He could pass on his genes through multiple women in a stable relationship. So in actuality, the fact that they eliminated polygamy for monogamy also hurts the health of our population. Because think about it. Let's say the guy is, let's say he's 6 foot, healthy, strong, in shape, no medical issues, you know what I'm saying? No health issues. And he could spread his genes amongst multiple women. So now you have far stronger, far healthier children being born through this one man. You know what I mean? So there's always gonna be more women than men because it's if you're not going by the Chinese law where you had the one child thing, but there will always be more women than men. You know what I'm saying? Because women don't fight the wars, they don't do the most dangerous jobs. They naturally live longer because a man builds society to have it that by default, you know what I'm saying, you don't need to be a man to thrive. So in removing polygamy, they made it illegal for a man, a strong, healthy man, to pass on his genes to more women, which creates a healthier, more spread out gene pool of healthy men, and healthier children. Now, another thing making polygamy illegal did is it harmed the male psyche. It really limited and harmed men. You know what I'm saying? It really harmed a man's mental and psyche because some men, their peak is 2 to 3 women. Some men need more than one woman. You know what I'm saying? They need more than one woman to feel complete. Some men need 5, some men need 10. You know what I mean? And a lot people watching this will say, well, that's too many, blah, blah, blah. No, the thing is this. Let's say a man, for example, has 5 wives. 5 wives. Now, we know women synchronize their periods and so on, or they don't synchronize, whatever. What happens is if that man comes back home, let's say he wants to have sex, and one of his wives has her period, he could sleep with the woman that doesn't have her period. Or let's say, one woman just isn't interested, doesn't want to have sex right now. You know what I mean? She could basically, the others will have sex with him. It gives the women more freedom to express and control their sexuality without any level of guilt because there's always another woman there to sleep with him if she can't or she isn't up to it or just isn't physically able to, especially the physically able to aspect because of her period. If she's having her period, she isn't able to sleep with him. There's always another woman in the relationship to do so that she knows. And this gives her more of a break and gives her more room to live without worrying that her man isn't satisfied, that her man isn't being sexually fulfilled. So it did a lot of that, you know what I mean? And what this does and what polygamy did, because they always try to demonize it from a man's perspective, the men, the men, the men. No, 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 no. What polygamy did for the women also is that polygamy gave women, far less reasons to nag or, be only have a man to talk to, as they had a sister wife who they lived with, they could talk to, they could share ideas, they could talk about ways to satisfy their man together, they could talk about the world. They basically had someone to talk to and live with that they could trust, and also someone that, if they were sexually experimenting, someone that's they had access to that was healthy and far STD free, access to potentially if they were trying, sexuality with each other. And also, like I said, the other thing it did is that it helped the women also when it comes to raising the children. The fact that the women had to share this, as women can actually not only synchronize their periods, but also women can go into a state of lactation where they produce breast milk even if they're not pregnant. So some women would be able to lean on their fellow woman for breastfeeding duties, and it was far easier to take care of the household and take care of the gardening and growing, farming chores when there are multiple women. There's less work because it's shared amongst multiple women, you know. And another thing I forgot with the prostitution thing is that another thing prostitution did is it actually kept wives healthier. It kept wives healthier and in better shape, because the wives knew that if they were not in better shape, if they were not healthy and sexually attractive to their man, there was far more of a chance that that man would either leave them or that man would seek far more sexual activity with the women in the brothels, you know. So shout out to Caduceus. So prostitution played a major role in keeping the wives in better shape, eating better, feeding their children, healthier food, because the wives would have to feed the children healthy to stay healthy themselves. So you have far less obesity when you have prostitution. You know what I mean? So, that was a role prostitution played too. I mean, I realized prostitution played a major role in the health of a family, so especially when it came to the women, you know what I mean? So now without prostitution, you see a rampant obesity, you know what I'm saying? Rampant obesity, because the women know they're the only option, and I'm going to go further into that, but yeah, let's get back to polygamy. Now, the other damage that polygamy did is that a man, in only being access to one woman, a man gets a lot of sexual and mental frustration because he's with one woman, but in his mind and in his body is screaming that he could have more, that he should have more, and mentally he has resources. That's why you see a man with millions of dollars, for example, who can't multiply his family, be fruitful. There's a level of depression there because he knows he can make all this money, but he can't maximize that money to having, more family. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of depression that starts there. That's why you see a man where even if this man has, for example, this man has a loving, super sexually active woman, that he's still depressed. She gives him, BJs, HJs, upside down, underwater. She does all this sexual activity for him, but he's still not satisfied because he wants the responsibility and accountability for having more than one woman in his life, You know what I mean? So that one woman, and then what it does is the lack of polygamy creates frustration on the one woman he's with because she's trying to multiply herself. She's trying to be more than one woman to sexually satisfy him, and eventually she loses her identity because she's trying to be so adventurous and loses herself. You know what I'm saying? So she's trying to sexually satisfy this man, and she eventually loses herself because she's trying to be such a different person to satisfy him, you know. So it puts a lot of strain on the women as well, because now how can she satisfy? She could wear a different dress, she could try to speak differently, but that's not why he got with her to begin with. So it creates a very mental issue for women as they're trying to project and be something they're not, something that another woman in a relationship would be, and it does a lot of damage, to a woman psychologically. That's why you see certain women where they're not cheating on their man, but they're so mentally distraught and depressed. They have a healthy relationship, but they just can't. They're losing themselves trying to be more than one woman to sexually satisfy this man's appetite, and it puts such a strain on her mentally and physically as she now, is missing out on other chores and other issues that are prevalent in the household. So there's a lot of mental damage and physical damage to the woman when she has to attempt to be more than one woman and seeking to sexually satisfy this man. And another thing that happens is that with polygamy, it hurts the man is that, the man can't, for example, he can't have more than one woman. And now he has to seek, and the biggest damage of polygamy is that now men have to, in fact, let me get back to prostitution. Now that, for example, since prostitution is illegal, the only way to access sex for a man is to actually seek out one woman, and he has to be servitude. He has to be a servant to this woman to have access to sex. So men that never wanted to have children will have to, for the sake of sexual relations and long-term sexual activity. Now, this is before all the laws, before child support, alimony, and all the legal issues, is that a man would have to, for long-term access to sexual relations, and so for long-term access to sex, a man that never had any intentions of starting a family, of having children, having a wife, or anything long term, this man has to basically forcefully go into a long-term relationship since prostitution is illegal. So this man has to force himself into a long-term relationship. And what this does is it creates a level of animosity and anger because that man has no freedom. That man had to have a long-term relationship with a woman to have, sexual access to a woman he trusts. You know what I'm saying? While the brothels, when prostitution was legal, a man could trust in just going to the brothel. He could trust that he wasn't going to be harmed or, hurt. You know what I'm saying? He would just go in there, have his sexual escapade, and go about his life. So it creates a lot of resentment. A lot of men are resenting the fact that they have to get into a long-term or short-term relationship just for sexual activity. Now this is before Tinder and all this stuff, but even Tinder has to play with that because, on Tinder you have to go to a woman, you got to talk, you got to negotiate, you got to socialize, when there are men that don't want nothing to do with that. They just want the sexual activity and leave. So this created, when prostitution was made illegal, this creates a man in a relationship with resentment. For example, a man would have children just for the sake of the woman wants children. He never wanted children. He never wanted children. You know what I'm saying? So he gives the woman the children to continue this long-term access to sex, even though he knows that, having the children with her will damage, will alter her body to beyond what he's attracted to. But just to get this sexual access, he'll do it. And the damage this does to the women when you don't have prostitution is that the women that, for example, never wanted a long-term relationship with a man to have access to resources, or who just wanted to have sexual escapades and fun, have to go towards a short-term relationship and long-term relationship, or have children for a man when they don't want to have any children, just to have a level of stability. And the other thing is, even for the women, they have to go on Tinder and so on. For example, let's say these sites, they have to go on them and talk to a man, a stranger, because there were brothels with men as well, men who just slept with women. There were male brothels, not as popular, but they were an option. Men that would just sleep with the woman and she could go on her way. But the other thing is, women were able to be prostitutes and just sleep and get paid for it. Some women just see sex as a means to obtain resources, there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly natural. So for the men and women, the fact that prostitution was illegal removed both of their freedoms. Both of their freedoms. Women having children they didn't want. Men having children they didn't want, And it creates a level of, despising one another between the men and the women, So prostitution plays a huge role in freedom between the sexes, Once you remove prostitution, you limit. That's why I say we live in a, MLS, male limitation society, but in reality, we live in a limitation-based society, But basically, when you remove prostitution, you remove the freedom of expression. And the other thing is, without prostitution, a man, let's say he's traveling, he's away from his wife. Let's say he has to go on a business trip, and instead of him, where he would go to a brothel, just get his sexual activity, release his sexual release, then come home, now this man has to place himself in a dangerous scenario to satisfy his sexual needs by trying to get with a woman that's not a professional. So it now risks his relationship. Risks his relationship with his wife. Not that men can cheat. Like I said, men can't cheat. Men can't cheat. Men can only lie. You know what I'm saying? One woman and another woman is still a bill. He's still paying for something. You know what I mean? He's still providing. A man is always providing. Even if a woman was richer than a man, the man being around her, he provides protection, security that she can't provide for herself. But, now it endangers that man's relationship at home because now if he's away from home, he has to seek sexual activity and sexual release with a woman outside of his wife, and there's a risk of attachment that comes to it, and the laws don't allow it, and there's a risk that this man might be placing his life in danger for STDs and so on because he doesn't know this woman. He doesn't know her, so, what I mean? There's a lot of risk because prostitution is illegal. And, the brothels, as much as they like to, you could tell the movies like to, if you watch a lot of cowboy movies, they make the women that work the brothel look stupid and, look dirty. When in reality, that's her main money maker. So why would a woman, if she's a professional, be, having sex and not protecting herself and not keeping in good shape and so on? So they attempt to demonize prostitution with how they present it. But let's get back to polygamy. And since polygamy was made illegal, like I said, a man, just like the prostitution effect, a man has to, since prostitution's illegal, and let's say polygamy is illegal, a man now has to live with suppressing his needs and risking his life. That's why you'll see a man with a successful marriage and all that just sleep with a random woman and actually endanger his life. And I'm not saying he cheated on her. It's not about the cheating. It's that his standards are lowered because he just has to get a sexual release. His body is crying. His genetics, are crying that he has to pass it on or he has to dominate more than one woman. So you see a man lowering his standards, whatever. Now let's go beyond polygamy. Now let's go to, give me a minute. So, like I said, they made polygamy illegal in 1890. They made prostitution illegal, I think, in, I'm not sure, 1820 or 1840 or 70. I'm not sure. You could Google it. But there's a lot of damage that was done with polygamy being illegal and prostitution being made illegal. A lot of damage, you know what I'm saying? So now let's fast forward to, because the government made polygamy and prostitution illegal to actually trigger, a competition between women. You know what I'm saying? The government isn't stupid. The government is our fellow man. Men need to understand that a governing body is nothing more than a group of men come together and agree on bylaws and certain ways to conduct interaction with each other. But the government knew that, okay, now we've made prostitution illegal. There's a high level of frustration between the men and women. And when they made polygamy illegal, they definitely made frustration from the women, because now the women have to compete with each other to be married to a man or to have access to a man. So now that prepped up and created, polygamy hurts a lot of women when polygamy is not legal. Monogamy hurts a lot of women. Hurts more women than men. And, really it hurts women because now the women have to compete with each other for one man. It becomes, and there's more women than men. So when you make polygamy illegal, you put stress on women. Stress for that woman to actually compete with another woman to get a man. So now women can't really be friends They can't really be friends, and they end up being jealous of each other because where a scenario, for example, with polygamy, let's say a girl has a best friend and a man approaches her and this man's dating her. Then she has a best friend come over to the home and she doesn't want her best friend to be alone, so, and her best friend likes this guy too, finds him attractive. So now she could join in. She could join into this relationship and it could be a polygamous relationship rather than in a monogamous relationship. If she is jealous of her girlfriend, you know what I'm saying? If she wants a man too, just as good as a girl, she's going to try to take him. So now you have women where they'll actually bait, you know what I mean? They'll actually seek to divide the relationship, you know what I'm saying? A successful relationship between their girlfriends. That's why a lot of men are aware that a girlfriend might try to steal you from her, and women know this. That's why this whole MGTOW and the whole manosphere, like I said, there's a lack of critical thinking in the community. A lot of men lack critical thinking. I mean, they went to school where it actually destroyed it, but women can get along. Women can not be jealous of each other in a polygamous society because there's always the opportunity to join in on a relationship. And a man wouldn't, even if the man, for example, let's say the man liked one woman and, you know what I'm saying, didn't really want a polygamous another one, there's always a way for that woman to enter. And the thing is, the other woman, depending on her, she would stay healthy, even if she's not as, attractive as the other woman. She would still be in shape. She'd be healthy. So that man wouldn't mind bringing her on and starting a polygamous relationship. Without polygamy, women are actually part-time friends. They can't be full-time friends with each other because there's always the risk that the other woman might want her man, and there's always the risk of jealousy. So the women can't fully be friends, but in a polygamous society, they can be, because there's always an opportunity for that woman to join in, be part of that relationship rather than trying to remove her friend from the monogamous relationship. You know what I'm saying? So they don't cover that. There's no critical thinking on that aspect. But, let's fast forward. Let's go to 1920. Now, 1920, the government passes the right for women to vote. The government making prostitution illegal, making polygamy illegal. They've really created the scenario where there is a very division between men and women. The men can't get what they want. The women can't get what they want. And there's a level of jealousy and hatred on both sides. You know what I mean? Because polygamy is made illegal. You know what I'm saying? Because polygamy and prostitution is illegal. So you have a level of frustration on both sides. You know what I mean? On the women and the men, you have a level of frustration on both sides. You know what I'm saying? Level of frustration on both sides between the men and the women, because polygamy and prostitution is made illegal. So there's a high level of frustration on both sides. So to capitalize on this, what the government does, knowing that the women are frustrated and knowing that the government wants to slow down and limit the influence that men have on the government, because the Civil War wasn't enough. Yes, men are divided, because of the Civil War. But men are still the main voters, and they're still efficient. Men are naturally individual, as we can mold and reshape the world in our image and in our will. So the Civil War divided the men, but the government still had to deal with the male voters as the main, and men seek to keep you on a level of morality. Notice when the men were the only voters, you had families intact, you had extended families, because men seek to have extended families as a form of protection. You know what I'm saying? As a form of reliability. We can always leave our son with our cousins, our third cousins, whatever. You know what I mean? They seek that. Men would keep that intact as it helps them out. You know what I'm saying? But when you have women voting, that changes everything. Especially when you've removed a woman's freedom for prostitution, freedom for polygamy, and even freedom for, the whole polyamorous thing where, multiple women for one woman, whatever. You know what I mean? You've removed a woman's freedom, so you have frustration on both sides. But on the male side, the men can vote and still somewhat deal with what they're facing. At least they can keep, even though prostitution is illegal and polygamy is illegal, the men can at least, with the legal ability to vote, can keep their extended family intact and can keep their family intact and their property. So what the government does, the government strikes. In 1920, the government, gives women the right to vote. You know what I mean? Even though a lot of women didn't want the right to vote, they don't mention that. The women didn't want that. Not all of them, you know what I mean? So what happens is, instead of the government giving women the right to vote, making it, let's say, 25% that of a male vote or 10% that of a male vote, since women don't go to war, since women aren't the majority working the construction and the dangerous jobs that keep the country afloat, the government gives the women the exact same level of voting, because they know they create a voter without the accountability, without the responsibility, so they can easily weaponize that voter. The women aren't the one going to war, so they could vote to send men to war. You know what I'm saying? They could have that power. They basically amplify their decisions. And what the government does by having women vote with the same equal vote as men is that the government now can remove the say of men, the word of man, and, being responsible, keeping their word and being so, having such access, the men having such access to the government. Because the thing is this, eventually, if men were the only people to vote and you never had women voting, eventually polygamy would return. Eventually, prostitution would return, and far quicker, far sooner than later. You know what I mean? Because men would eventually sit down and have a conversation, and men would eventually bring it up to the government, and there will be risk of rebellion. You know what I'm saying? Be risk of rebellion. So what the government does by giving women the right to vote, they put a buffer between the government and the men. You know what I'm saying? So they gave women the same level of voting power, as the men, without the accountability, without the responsibility that comes with being able to vote and being able to, protect the country and so on. So, and the fact that men earn the right to vote. I mean, all the men that fought in the War of Independence for America, they earned the right to vote. They earned the right for America to be an independent country. So, you know what I'm saying? For the men there in this independent country to vote and prosper. So what the government did by giving women the right to vote is that they spit in the face of all these men, that fought and died, especially giving the women the same level of voting as the men. It's basically, it's kind of like this. You worked to build a railroad. You worked to build a railroad, and then they give the credit to the men to the people that did nothing at all for the railroad. You worked, you bled and sweat. Some men died, and they gave credit for building the railroad to those that had nothing to do with it. And you know what I mean? And what the government did is, now if they gave women the right to vote and the vote was about 20% that of a man, 10% that of a man, it would make sense because, the women are in America and there are issues they could bring up that maybe men don't, understand or men aren't aware of, and by them having 10%, 20% that of a man's vote, they could bring that up. But at the same time, their votes would actually have to have reasons behind it. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't just be something they feel, and even if they felt some type of way, it wouldn't matter because it's 20% that of a man's vote. So, if you got some women that slept around, can't find a man to marry them, that just want to change the laws, they would never be heard. They would have to live with their decisions. And what happened, and the other thing is this: men, they like to demonize men. Oh, before women could vote, there was no protection or safety for women, as though men would build a society where their sisters, their mothers, their aunts, their grandparents were not safe. You know what I'm saying? Their wives were not safe. Men naturally put laws in place, sheriffs and cops and all that. They put those in place to protect the women in their lives. So it's really a fallacy. It's a fallacy that women were not safe or protected before they could vote. It's the government selling its agenda to make women be antagonistic towards men, and without them looking at the fact that the government was actually the one fighting to remove their freedoms, remove their right with polygamous relationships to a man, remove their right to, if they wanted to earn money sleeping around as prostitutes or eventually own a brothel, they could do it. You know what I'm saying? So the government was really the problem. Men have always been fighting to have their sisters protected. That's why men would, offer their daughters to a man, and they would have to vet them out, make sure this man was safe and reasonable. You know what I mean? Safe and reasonable for their daughter, But the government gave women the right to vote, the same ability as a man. Their vote is worth the same. But not only that, the government had to make even more insurance, because the last thing the government wants is male influence on the government, because men will keep the government in line. And the government knows that when men are synchronized and unified to keep the government in line, there's always a threat of rebellion if the government doesn't do its job. You know what I mean? That's why you see a lot of countries where there's rebellion. The men don't agree with what the government's doing. You know what I'm saying? So what the government did to put icing on the female voting cake is that the government made sure that they count all the votes. You know what I'm saying? They count all the votes, even when it's unfair. They didn't provide a check and balance on the sexes when it comes to voting. For example, if 500 men vote to 450 women vote for the mayor, they count all the votes instead of limiting it to 450 to make it fair. You know what I'm saying? And they know that you have more women, so you'll always have more female voters. Now, here's the, so it's broken already. Now to say it again, if you have, let's say you got 600 women vote for the governor and you got 550 men vote for the governor, they count all the votes instead of checking and balancing, limiting it to 550 each, since to make it fair for sexual representation, to make it fair. Now, during 1920, women were not they were not voting in mass. It basically became a tool for the unprepared men. A lot of men were basically using their women as a tool for extra votes. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of, a lot of men didn't see it coming. They thought, well, okay, my wife can vote now. So now if I have ideas or I want something done, I can use my wife as a vote. That's kind of what the government did. The government made the men thought, some men thought, well, the women can vote. Now I can use my wife to vote for what I want in the long term. The men should have, in all honesty, should have rebelled and saw that the government was using this to manipulate and buffer and eventually completely remove the stability that men would provide in the future. But a lot of men didn't see this coming. A lot of them didn't see that this was a government's weapon, their Trojan horse, their agent. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of men would use their women to vote. Now, 1920, it was possible. This is before alimony. This is before child support. This is even before, I think this is before welfare. You know what I mean? So this is before pro-woman and anti-male practices by the government. So a lot of men enjoyed this ability because the men that had a stable environment with their women, they could have their women vote for whatever they wanted. The women were just extra votes. You know what I'm saying? But when the government didn't want to, weaponize the woman's vote so quickly. So you have 1950 come in. The government eventually passes welfare. And what the government does with welfare is that the government, and this is where we get to the black community, the government knew, let's be honest here, the majority of the government is white. You know what I'm saying? The white government that had its issues with the black community weaponized welfare. You know what I'm saying? They weaponized welfare because at the time, the black community by percentages was more together, stronger than the white community as a family. You know what I'm saying? As a family, the black community was far more intact, far stronger, far unified than the white community. So it basically, what they did with welfare, and I could be wrong with the timing, you could Google it, but what the government did with welfare in the 1950s is that they gave the black women an alternative, and the minority women an alternative. If you kick your husband out, you know what I'm saying? If you kick your husband out, we'll help you. The government will only provide you and save and help you if you kick the father out, aka the father that protects the family from the government. You know what I'm saying? And at the time, this is before civil rights and all that stuff. So the women started kicking their men out. You know what I'm saying? And kicking their men out, and some men were stupid enough to see this as a positive. And what happened is the government started giving them rations, giving them just enough for next month. You know what I mean? And took the father out of the house, his influence, the stability he provided, the image of a family he provided by being in the house. So the black women took that, you know what I'm saying? And the minority women took that. And the black, just like the men didn't rebel when the women got the right to vote, because they saw it as a point of the government using it to manipulate their women and, weaponize them, weaponize their vote. The black men in mass didn't do nothing. You know what I'm saying? They didn't call the black women out and say, you're accepting welfare from the very same government that's killing us. That's, that has me when I drive outside, I could be picked up, shot, and killed. This is the same government. You know what I mean? So the government weaponized welfare, and this was affected too by some white families and Irish families and so on. You know what I mean? Where the government made it so that if a man is present, they will not help you. You know what I mean? And you gotta remember, this is the time where the government and the media had complete control. They were the only way to get news. You know what I mean? So they could truly amplify their agenda. But at the same time, I'll probably do a video that goes deeper into the media and how the media amplifies its agenda. But basically they did that. They weaponized. Now the next setup, we gave the women to vote. We gave them the right to vote. Now we're weaponizing them. So they weaponized them with welfare, and this is where they destroyed the black community. Is that you got Margaret Stringer, who brought abortion clinics to the black community, and the black women and minority women, black women, accepted these abortion clinics and didn't rebel, didn't march against them. You're going to give us clinics to kill our children, our future children, before you give us civil rights and justice. You know what I'm saying? Access to a fair and just legal system that isn't racist or colorism, whatever. And you're going to give us abortion clinics before you give us access to justice and civil rights? The women should have rebelled, and the black community as a whole should have rebelled against Margaret Stringer bringing these abortion clinics. Because who needs abortion clinics when you don't have civil rights and justice and taxation? This is the same time where blacks are paying tax and there's segregation, where they don't have access to pools or water when their tax money is paying for it. It should have been a red flag automatically that all the blacks should have unified, no abortion clinics in our neighborhood, because we don't even have rights to civil liberties and justice. You know what I'm saying? And then you had the government weaponizing women even more with how the government funded abortion clinics. You know what I'm saying? They had women marching for abortion clinics everywhere. You had the black women marching with the white feminist, you know what I mean, the white effeminist, whatever. Man, I effing hate, man, YouTube, man, it's trash. But the replacement is coming soon. I need to get this channel to 1,000 subs, man. We need to get this to 1,000 subs so I can back it up on Odyssey. You know what I mean? I think I should be able to do it now. But yeah, so the black women marched with the white feminists, the white effeminists, and marched with them for women's rights. You know what I'm saying? But the women don't understand. Whatever they're marching for, it has nothing to do with them getting rights. It has something to do with the government getting rights to their natural liberty. So the women were marching, for women's rights, and the black women marched with the white women before they even had complete civil rights and justified rights nationwide. So you march with them when they have more to gain than you, because the white women have their men in political settings. There are white men that are judges, white men that are cops, white men that are policemen, presidents, judges, Congress, governors, mayors, far more white men. So the white women in the long run have far more to win when it comes to their access of networking, so a lot of the black women joined them, joined them and marched with them. And the black men at the time did not rebel against this and say, as a whole, that if you as a black woman march with these white women, you're not with us. You're not going to be accepted by us, and we black men will completely, we're rebelling and will not marry any more black women. So, there was a very war, and a lot of the white men didn't see what was coming also with the white women marching for women's rights. They call it the year of freedom of love, and the 60s they call it free love. But how is it free love when polygamy isn't legal? Prostitution isn't legal. It's funny how the media flips something to benefit themselves. It's free love when free love is illegal. It's stupid. But so they marched with the white feminists, and the women were getting rights to abortion. But the government, this is the government. The government since the Civil War proved that it has no plans for male stability or male representation, and the man is the head of the family. The man is the protection and a lot of people like to say provider. No, the man is the protector and provider. Protection comes first. You can't have any stability without protection. Why would you provide something if you can't protect it? Protection comes first. It's always come first. You know what I mean? So what happens is they give the women the right to abortion. But what they do, this is the government. What the government does is the government removes a man's ability to participate in that abortion. You know what I'm saying? Of course, the woman should have the right to abort the child. You know what I'm saying? But the woman should not have the right to keep the child without the man's consent. You know what I'm saying? So this is where the government begins. You know what I'm saying? Starts beginning. Women think they won something with abortion rights, but in reality, it was the nail in the coffin. It allowed the government to draw closer, draw to the point where the government has absolute power over dictating the family. You know what I'm saying? And since the government knows women are naturally more emotional, women are not capable of reshaping the world with their physicality or dominating the world because they're the weaker sex. Because were they able to dominate the world, it would mean they would have to dominate men. So what the government does, and shout out to MD with the zoo thing, with the zoo is that the government gives women the right, absolute control over abortion. They can not only abort the child, and then the thing about abortion is it was a right that's needed. In case a woman was her sex from her was taken, not given. If sex from her was taken, not given, and she got pregnant, she wants to abort that child because she doesn't want to give birth to a child that will be a constant reminder that sex from her was taken, not given. It makes perfect sense that she should be able to abort that child and not go through that pregnancy. Makes perfect sense. But when you give a woman the right to choose to either abort or keep the child without the man's consent, that was when there's no going back. That's when men and women, the divide was absolute. That's when the divide became absolute. That's why you had certain states go against abortion to a certain extent, but we know it's the government. So the government has no, with what they did in the Civil War, they have no just means of doing it. You know what I'm saying? A woman should have access to abortion if sex was taken from her, not given. You know what I mean? But when government gave women the right to completely decide whether that child lives or dies without, when they gave her the right to decide whether she keeps that child without the consent of a man, it was over. It was the relationship between men and women completely became a battle of the sexes. You know what I'm saying? Became a battle of the sexes at that point. You know what I'm saying? It became men versus women. You know what I mean? That's what it became. So, and it's funded, and the women's are funded by the government, which is funded by the men. You know what I mean? So now they can keep a child without a man's consent. And the government, eventually incorporated child support. The government eventually incorporated no-fault divorce in 1969. All this to weaponize a woman, weaponize interaction with a woman and a man. You know what I'm saying? No-fault divorce gave her the emotional opportunity to leave that marriage anytime she felt like it. She could leave and completely bankrupt and destroy that man and provide the government a potential prisoner for private prisons. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of the white men thought, this will only affect the blacks. It'll only affect the black men. And the black men were the first ones to be demolished and destroyed by this, as their women marched with the white feminists, white women for nothing. You know what I'm saying? For nothing. When you as, the thing is, black women don't, and I plan to make a video separate of this, but I got to cover it as a whole. But the black women didn't understand, and this is why there's such animosity with the modern black woman and the previous black woman with the black men. The black men, you know what I'm saying? And you got to remember, Oprah in the 80s, 90s, 2000s was demonizing black men. You know what I mean? And who did she work for? Major TV network that has connections to major politicians, and who are the majority of politicians? They're white. So they demonize the black man so more black women can take rights away, join the white women. You know what I mean? And what black women don't get, and this is the major problem that black men have with black women, is that you have, and this is why black men are avoiding them, is that you can admit that the women before you are wrong. If you could admit that the women that betrayed their black men, your grandmothers, your great grandmothers, you know what I'm saying, betrayed them in the 50s, if you can admit that, we can move on, and you could admit that and go against what they did. I mean, in all honesty, all black women should seek to abolish or completely reform child support and reform no-fault divorce in their, because it doesn't help them in the long run. You know what I'm saying? Especially, the removal and destruction of a stable relationship, because what black women don't get, and what they saw was a promise, they thought they'd get access to the white man and, lighter skinned man or whatever. But in reality, a black woman will always give birth to a darker skinned, more Negro, because the black man's DNA is dominant. You know what I'm saying? It's the dominant genes. So it will always be a burden. If a white man has a child with a black woman, it's a burden. It's a far more of a burden than having one with a white woman or an Asian woman, because that burden is that his child will be treated like a black man's child. You know what I'm saying? Will be unjustly targeted, will not have representation politically. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of black women just took that bait from the white feminists, and I plan to make a video eventually on that. But if the black women were to basically rebel against and want reform Because right now, what the black men are doing is they're stepping away. The black men were the first ones to go their own way. The black men, because more than 40% of black men aren't having children with black women. You know what I'm saying? We used to be, as a race, used to be 15% in growing. Eventually, black people were going to be 20, 30, 40% of, the country. But, once black women jumped on the white effingist train, the white womanist train, it completely destroyed the black family, which was the strongest family at the time, which now is the strongest family is the Mexican family. But at the time, the black family was the strongest family, most together family in the United States. I mean, it made sense. I mean, they just got freed from slavery not too long ago, so they're going to stick together. You know what I mean? Eventually, the numbers will come down naturally. But as a percentage, the black family was the strongest family. And, Oprah was demonizing black men when the black men were the ones that wanted to be in their child's life the most. They still are. Because there's so much against the black man that his own, when he has access to his family or he appreciates, there's so much, weaponized against him. You know what I mean? So when the white men didn't, the white men as a whole didn't see what's coming. So their women were weaponized, and what happened is you have a rise with the private prisons. You know what I mean? You have all this stuff increasing, and you have the great divide between men and women to where we are now, and to touch up on something, because they like to say, oh, it's about love and, relationships are about love. No, love is an accessory. Love was never, especially in the eyes of a man does not care about love. Love had nothing to do with the main reason a man got into a relationship. You know what I'm saying? Love was an accessory. Okay, she loves me, great. But in reality, a man's priority was always that she loves the children. Forget me, as long as she loves our children, that's all that matters. That was priority in a relationship, is that the woman would love their children. You know what I'm saying? It had nothing to do with she loved him. It always had to do with she loves our children. You know what I mean? That was the stable, and he could trust her with his children. That was the stability of a relationship between a man and a woman, that she would love his children. So a woman didn't have to love her man. She just had to trust him. Trust that he would protect and provide, lead her, protect, provide, and lead her, and keep their family strong and secure. Love had nothing to do with it. But in a consumeristic society where they seek to have people consume, they had to make an accessory the necessity. You know what I'm saying? Making love the priority when love has nothing to do. Love can't pay the bills. Love can't pay, what I'm saying? Love doesn't, love can't overcome trust. You know what I'm saying? So they've basically created a society where you have the consumption of a accessory over the priorities. You know what I'm saying? Love is the priority because they want women. The government and the corporations know that if a woman was to not prioritize love, that she would prioritize loving her children. She would not spend as much money into the consumeristic society, and she would be more loyal and stable and seek leadership from her man over the government. You know what I'm saying? Over the government and corporations. And that sale pitch they've sold of a woman being in a kitchen cooking for her family for 8 hours is slavery, but her going to work for a corporation that doesn't give a damn about her is freedom for 8 hours. You know what I mean? This is why, and shout out to David Little, this is why women are struggling when they come off work. You know, like when they go to work, hey, how you doing? Hello. Hello, how you doing there? Nice to see you. Because they're so used to that they're only supposed to be happy or present the emotion of happiness at work, not outside of it. That's why you see women so quickly to be antagonistic outside of work, where you just ask, hey, you got any directions? I don't know where I'm going. Get away from me. You know, what do you want? I don't want to talk to you. Get the hell out of my face. You know what I'm saying? That's why you see so much antagonistic behavior. Because the whole indoctrination of the government's tool of feminism was to basically weaponize the women to where they can't exist or can't express emotion of happiness outside of the corporation, outside of government funded operations, welfare, Section 8, and so on. You know what I mean? No fault divorce, child support. It's all to basically own a woman's emotional expression. You know what I mean? So, but this is basically, man, where we are now, where we have such a great divide. And the thing is this, with what's going on with the battle of the sexes, which is all funded and created by our government. You know what I'm saying? What's happening is this: the women have been given the power, and what's going on is the men are stepping aside. The men are saying, you can seek out love and romance all you want. I see the laws. I see the legal. I see that you have the government, the overwhelming power and wrath of the trillion, multi-trillion, $100 trillion government on your side with global influence. You know what I mean? I'm just a man. I'm not going to risk my life for love and all that crap to be trapped under the government's rule that you think you have power as a woman when you have no power at all. You're just giving your whole rights as a human being to the government. I'm good. No thanks. You know what I'm saying? So that's what's happening. A lot of men are looking at the laws and they're looking at the women now. If you want men back, what are you gonna do legally? The men are not gonna go like you see that film Red Pill, which had to deal with the MRA, men's right activists, that were seeking to, fight for child support and change these laws and all this when the male vote actually in the country today means nothing. There's always more women, and they can always weaponize and mobilize the women to have them shut down something a man's voting for. Then the men that are against and that are simplified, that are blue pilled or purple pilled simps, will be against the men as well. So the men have an overwhelming thing to go against. That's why men taking the black pill have realized, this ain't our battle. If the women want the men back, they gotta step up and they have to change the laws. It's not up to us men. We men aren't gonna do nothing. We know you have the overwhelming support of the government. You have the overwhelming numbers when it comes to votes, because we have to face our own fellow man. You want to do something legally, you want us back, go to the legal system and reform and abolish certain laws. Until then, we're not doing nothing. And what this is doing, and how this is where a lot of men in the manosphere don't listen. They don't have critical thinking skills. When the women say women are most impacted and most affected, it's not a lie. It's true. The women have a short window, a limited window to have healthy children. You know what I'm saying? So the longer the men stay away from them, the further they get towards that expiration date of their fertility, of being able to have children and help a man start a family. You know what I'm saying? So the women are most affected. You know what I'm saying? They're not lying. Because another thing, the women were, like I said before, women were given the right to vote, whether they wanted it or not. You know what I'm saying? Whether they wanted this responsibility or not, the government made their decision. You know what I'm saying? So it's the women are the ones most affected. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, a lot of men in the manosphere need to understand is that if they have critical thinking, is that, dude, we men have run the world. There's no way a group of women are the ones that started feminism. They run the government and all this. No, dude, it's your fellow man. Your fellow man that has realized that in order to control men, we have to weaponize the women. You know what I'm saying? Because the men will not, the men won't, and the men will not. You know what I mean? You can't. It's not an option. The men aren't fighting women. Why would you fight them? There's no point. So what the government didn't count on, and this is why the manosphere and the word men going their own way has been put away. Is they didn't count on men in mass to walk away, And as I coined this new term that's going on, men going Casper. Men are Caspers now. Men are basically ghosting society. You know what I'm saying? They're not ghosting relationships. That's part-time. That's being a part-time ghost, and that's being involved in society. Men are basically completely ghosting society full-time. So they're going Casper, and a lot of men, like I said with the video I created, the gold pill, after you take the black pill where you seek out solutions overseas, you will eventually have to take the gold pill where there's nothing but solutions, because you seek whatever you want around the world. There are no more issues when the world is the solution, But the government didn't count on a growing amount of men going Casper, men walking away from the system, men monkeying, whatever you call it, because the birth rate is dropped by over 4%. Let's just say it's 5% now, and decreasing further and further. You know what I'm saying? Men are not participating anymore. You see the government doing some pullbacks where they're limiting abortion, but the thing is, men don't disagree with abortion, especially for, like I said, women that sex has been taken from them, not given. They should have the right to abort a child, or women that are in a relationship that has no future, they should have the right to abort the child. Men don't have a problem with that unless they're religious, but that's different. When it has to do with religion, it's a very different thing. But the thing is this: men are basically doing the ultimate rebellion. Men are removing their seed from the table. And when men remove their seed from the table, what happens is a country has a silent death. Sun Tzu, you know what I mean? I don't think that's even his real name. I figure Sun Tzu's ultimate thing, he said the ultimate victory is to not have war at all. And that's what men are doing. Men walk away. The black men were the first one to walk away from their women, not having children by over 30% with their own women. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you see so much. That's why you see now the white media and these white slaves, the white men that are basically purple-pilled slaves. You know what I'm saying? Saying, they're taking our women. You know what I'm saying? They're signaling. They're virtue signaling to other white men, man. You gotta marry our women. You gotta have children with our women, because the other races are taking our women. But the men that have taken the black pill, the men that have taken the gold pill, the men that have taken the adaptive pill, the Tony pill, the men that have gone Casper are realizing, dude, the government has taken our women. You know what I mean? We don't gotta worry about other men. As a white man, I don't worry about, for example, a white man. I don't worry about a black man taking our women. I don't worry about an Asian man. I don't worry about Arab, Indian. I don't worry about any man taking my women because the government has our women. You know what I'm saying? The government has our women, so this whole BS you're selling to me won't work. It doesn't matter. You're just virtue signaling and praying that I, as a white man, will have a child with a white woman so I can continue to be a slave in the system, get caught up with alimony, get caught up with child support. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing is with the internet, it's going viral. Like Dr. Dre's divorce has gone viral. It's everywhere that he's got to pay this woman $3.3 million a year when the average American in their lifetime won't even make $2 million. So why does she need that much money for? You know what I'm saying? It's gone viral. What the government doesn't get is that men are watching this, and young men too. The biggest thing is young men are watching this and saying, man, they're coming to the realization that America is about fast money and fast women. You're here only to make money and work. You're not here for starting a family or long-term relationships. And a lot of young men, the younger they take, I'd say you got to take the black pill from, guys like me, guys like MGTOW Dictionary. You got to buy his book, 48 Laws of Dating, the Black Pill book. Because the problem with the black pill, you got to be careful who you take the black pill knowledge from. There's a lot of gray pillars, dark gray pills. You got a guy like CBP who's a dark gray pill, who's teaching men depression to eventually take the rope necklace and the wrist knife. Then you got other channels that are, gray pilled. And I got a video on it, but basically the gray pill are men that have taken the black pill, that are aware of the whole truth of society, that seek to go back into it, that seek to return to it and obtain validation from it, even if they know the whole truth. You know what I'm saying? You as a man, in all honesty, for the young man watching this or the men that are ignorant to the manosphere, you have to start off. It don't matter anymore. Since they're actually targeting young men now, you know what I'm saying? They're targeting young men with, how they removed the Boy Scouts. They're targeting young men with false accusations. I mean, there was a boy in high school who just touched a girl to say hello, and now he's facing, he's facing charges for sexual abuse. You know what I'm saying? I think it was in London or whatever. And there was a kid in high school, you could look it up. A kid slept with a girl, and they're women that conspired, that got together to lie, and because he was a player. But here's the thing we know as men is that you women are the ones that open your legs to these men. So even though the man's a player or whatever, you're the one that allows him inside of you. So you can't really blame the man. You're the one who allows it and initiated it. So a lot of these boys are being targeted. So a lot of boys, I would say, it has to be mandatory if you're a young man in the United States. You have to, I would say, read the 48 Laws of Dating. You got to take the Black Pill book. You got to read the Black Pill book by the writer of the 48 Laws of Dating. And you got to watch my video on the Tony pill. You got to watch my pill series, because you got to be careful where you get this information, because some men, like I said, they're dark There's gray-pilled men. The gray-pilled men are basically men that know the whole truth about this society, but they live outside of it. They know the looks theory. They know how your looks affect you. They know all the issues, your height. They know how this will affect you in society, but they still tell you to go back into society. And the dark gray pilled guys basically tell you the difference between them is, and shout out to BRP, who told me, dude, there's got to be multiple shades of gray. The dark gray pilled guys are basically the guys that tell you that your life is over if a woman doesn't validate your existence. If a woman in society doesn't validate your existence, it's over. You got to get plastic surgery on your face. You got to do anything to get female validation. That was a guy like CBP, you know what I'm saying? The cucking boy punk. You know what I'm saying? You got some other channels you got to watch out for. These channels sell the truth as depression. Any channel that tells you as a man that freedom and truth are depressing, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And they're really against you. They're trying to sell you depression so they can profit off of you. The truth and freedom is amazing. There's nothing depressive about it at all. What's depressive is a man knowing that he's going to jail because he's late on child support. He was absolutely faithful and had honor for his family. What's depressive is a man that's going to prison for late payments on alimony when he did nothing wrong in the marriage. That's what's depressive. You know what I mean? You knowing the truth and being free has nothing to do with depression at all. You'll see this from a lot of channels, and you guys see this as a red flag. Any channel that tells you as a man that the truth is depressive. The truth is depression. Freedom is depression. They're basically, if they speak of the black pill, they're gray pillars of either, like I said, the gray pill. The normal gray pilled man is just a man that will say, even though I know my height, my weight, my looks affect me, even though I know the whole truth of society, I still want to go back in, date, get married and all that. That's a gray pilled man. He'll tell you the black pill truth. And the black pill is different than the red pill. The red pill is basically the half truth. It's not the whole truth. It's basically a glass half filled, and they improvise with air. While the black pill is the full glass. The glass is filled with the whole truth. You know what I'm saying? So you as a man, you have to be very careful to avoid the gray pill. And the gray pill, the guys that are gray pilled, they won't be as harmful to you, as the dark gray pilled man. You can watch my video. You'll see the difference. I discovered the gray pill and many other pills because I have a philosophy series. It's to help you as a man identify your behavior patterns so you can better your life or just accept what you are, but like I said, man, to end this video, a lot of men are just sitting back. The men that are going Casper, that are basically, ghosting the entire country domestically, where they're not getting involved in anything. And a lot of women, if you watch the movie Casper, the Friendly Ghost from the 90s, the woman had to turn Casper back to a human, back to a living person. And the women now, this is their job. The women, shout out to Caduceus who said, Ghostbusters, the women now have two choices. They could become Ghostbusters, where they're trying to capture a ghost, which is the majority of men will soon go Casper and start ghosting society. That's why you see a video of a woman saying, how come men are approaching us? How come men are talking to us at the bar? These things will go and continue to go even more viral, because what men are realizing, and the young men, and the young men are obtaining knowledge that puts them at the mind state of a 30-year-old man. For example, you got twig teens going their own way. A lot of teenagers are absorbing this, the MGTOW and the manosphere, and having being ahead of life. You know what I'm saying? And being ahead, they're getting a boost. They're basically skipping grades. They're maturing at a level beyond their age. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of women have to understand now, it's up to you. The ball is in your court. You either will change things legally, or you're going to hear a lot more women. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, the government removed polygamy. The government removed prostitution. The government gave women the voting rights to basically further end and remove their freedom. You know what I mean? To call the 1960s the era of love, that's funny as hell. How's it an era of love when it's not legal to be polygamous, not legal to have a polyamory relationship? How is it an era of love? So a lot of women, man, you're going to see more videos of women. And like I said, the manosphere is ahead. Men do not care about the videos where women are speaking up on men's rights. Men understand that's a chameleon. A woman that'll basically say what men want to hear. So it's not going to work. And that's been established over 10 years in the manosphere. Shout out to Sandman, Barbarossa, you know what I mean? Shout out to MGTOW's freedom. It's no longer, doing that, whatever. But the thing is this, man, a lot of the women don't get it, that they're behind and the men are advancing mentally. You know what I'm saying? Men are always thinking about solutions, and what's happening is the women are behind. And, you're going to see a lot more women do all these TikTok videos. A man deserves to come home and have food cooked and a man deserves to have food cooked, prepared when he comes from work, a back rub, a massage. The men realize this is a chameleon ploy to attract male resources and male commitment. And the men realize that women have the power to allow a man. There's allowance. Men understand that they left, for example, a man left the supervision of his parents. Now he has to join the supervision of a woman. You know what I'm saying? She has to allow him to have a wife, allow him access to his children, allow him to not be on child support, allow him to not be on alimony, allow him to go drink at the bar with his friends late at night. Men are looking at it as, it doesn't matter what you say. We know it's all about allowance. It's about what you'll allow us to do, and that you could stop allowing us to have a positive woman in our lives. So men are looking at the legal ramifications of this and basically stepping away from it. You know what I'm saying? They're completely, once a man goes Casper, it's over. I'm gonna do a new video soon, but a lot of men are going Casper, and right now it's up to you women. The ball is in your women's court, and legally, unless women start doing, and even the women we know, for example, the Red Pill movie, we know that woman was she was the first and one of many. Well, she's not the first. I think a woman wrote a book called Men on Strike. You know what I'm saying? Whatever her intentions were, men understand, and I've coined this phrase, there are simp hunters. You know what I'm saying? Simp hunters are women that basically will, for example, like the woman who did the Red Pill movie, she will basically go into a male space, film them, allow the men to talk. She will promote these men. She will do videos, let them speak to obtain male resources through these men to have them eventually simp and protect her. You know what I'm saying? And it's not white knighting. There's a difference. A white knight is a man that basically just stands up for a woman he doesn't know. Or if he knows her, you know what I mean? He just stands up for, to be the white knight in shining armor. But a simp hunter will turn men to her simp swords. A simp sword is basically a man that will defend a woman that he thinks is defending her, defending him and standing beside him. Like you had the Red Pill movie, you know what I'm saying, where that chick did a whole documentary for the men and makes it look like she's standing beside men when in reality she isn't married. She doesn't have anything long term. And she literally represents everything they're talking about in the manosphere. You know what I mean? So that's a simp hunter, is a woman that goes into a male space and basically allows the men to continue to lead and gives her 2 cents and tries to get attention and protection from these men by joining a male space and not being a threat to it somewhat. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference, because a chameleon is a woman that basically she's still leading. She's the one projecting everything and doesn't really have male leadership. You know what I mean? But a simp hunter is a woman that will go into a male space, allow the male leadership to continue, give her 2 cents on things, her opinions, and eventually weaponize these men to stand up for her. But the thing is this, it's going to continue on. You're going to see far more videos of women, you know what I'm saying, of women basically crying, where have the good men gone? Why aren't men approaching us? This and that. It's going to keep going viral. And the thing is this, what the government's waiting for, the government does this. The government will mess up and the government won't apologize. They'll let the women eventually scream and yell, and then they'll take legal action to make it seem like the government was doing a good thing. Yeah, we've stopped false accusations. You need evidence now, because the government is by your side when the government was the one that created the problem. So, it's up to the women now. What's going on is the men are going Casper. And what I mean by Casper is that, you see, men are ghosting. When men ghost, they had to initiate some physical interaction with the woman. You know what I'm saying? So they ghost you. They don't show up. But a lot of men are realizing, what's the point? What's the point of ghosting a woman when there is no purpose? There is no point of starting a long-term relationship anyway, or a short-term relationship, because the longer you stay with a woman, the more a case is built on you. Now she knows where you live. She knows this, she knows that, and then she could turn it against you. She could show up at your job screaming, saying you abused her. Then there's no privacy. She could share stuff online. She could weaponize white knights to come attack you and abuse you. So a lot of men are realizing, what's the point? So a lot of men are basically deciding to just go ghost. You know what I'm saying? Go Casper and become a full-time ghost and literally ghost society, ghost domestic society. And what's happening is a lot more men will deal with other Caspers. And the big difference with the Caspers versus the MGTOW men and a lot of other men is that when a man goes Casper, he will have no, you know what I'm saying, domestically, he'll have nothing holding him. He will seek no physical interactions or any physical thing that would demand he stays with them. So a lot of these men going Casper will only deal with other Caspers. And it's coming. You're going to see a group of men, and some men already going Casper, where they're literally ghosting society. They just don't know it yet. You know what I mean? And these men will only deal with fellow ghosts, because if you watch Casper the Friendly Ghost, his three uncles that were ghosts only dealt and hung around each other for the most part. And that's what you're going to see, a group of Caspers, men that are Caspers that just stick together, and they'll play video games. They'll live since they have no, it's like a ghost. Ghosts usually stay. For example, a ghost stays because they have unfinished business. So men going Casper are men just trying to earn profit, earn money. You know what I'm saying? Because they got unfinished business. They haven't earned enough money yet to leave the domestic society. So a lot of men going Casper will be those guys. Yo, bro, you want to go camping? Sure. Yo, bro, you want to go to the bar? Sure. They don't have any physical, they don't bound themselves to anything physical. So the Casper thing's gonna spread. Yes, women can ghost men. They can basically not show up, but a lot of times the women aren't the ones initiating. The women aren't the ones. Men are usually the ones asking the women out. And even if the women ask them out, the women can ghost them. But the thing is, a woman can't go Casper. A woman can't become a full-time ghost because the advantages that society gives them, they automatically get that for being born a woman. So a woman is excluded from going Casper. And the thing is, when men go Casper, it's really going to be an addictive feeling of freedom when a man literally has nothing holding him back. When he's not bound to anything physical at all. And these men will be free. This level of freedom is absolute. And the only way to turn a man from a Casper is to ghost hunt. Yeah, actually, yeah, that makes more sense. Ghost hunt. Become a ghost hunter. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? In fact, yeah, ghost hunter. No, Casper hunter. Yeah, Casper hunter. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be a woman trying to turn a Casper into a real man. A man with physical bonds, bound to something physical, but that's not happening. A lot of men, when they go Casper, it's extremely hard to damn near impossible to have them return, because that freedom of not being bound to anything physical, family, nothing holds this man back. You know what I'm saying? So when he goes Casper, it's going to be, and a lot of men are going to take this. Young men, you're going to see these men just living up, going camping, trips, their dogs, their pet, their friends, going to the bar. They don't care about nothing. You know what I'm saying? They're not bound to anything. Like, they'll be the guys that go to the bar. If a woman approached them, cool. If a woman danced with them afterwards, cool. They don't really care. They don't care about any validation from the physical domestic world at all. And these men are coming. It's going to be a bigger movement than the MGTOW, because the problem with MGTOW tell men to go their own way, but it's basically telling men to just run in a maze in circles. It doesn't provide any solutions other than to avoid risk. You know what I'm saying? Avoid risk. So there's a heavy thing with MGTOW on that aspect. You know what I'm saying? And you got the whole MGTOW monk thing where men are suppressing themselves, going monk completely when, it's really them awaiting the return of the virtuous woman in a domestic state when they could literally go overseas and get the sexual interaction they want. You know what I'm saying? You could be a monk domestically, but overseas, you don't have to be. You know what I'm saying? And then you got the shout out to whoever thought of missing Tao, men sent their own way. There's a lot of men who were missing Tao, men that were basically, relieved of their duties of being fathers and so on. And, they don't understand that, they won't accept a accountability for placing themselves in that position. But like I said, a lot of women gonna have to make a choice. The ball's on your court. And the thing is, the birth rate continues to decline. I mean, it's at 4%. It's gonna continue to decline until it hits. And I'd say this, men are gonna eventually look at declining the birth rate as a game. They're gonna say, let's get it to 10%, let's get it to 20%, let's get it to 50%. It doesn't affect them. Doesn't affect the men. But every day a man doesn't have a child with a woman, some woman is becoming infertile and missing out on that opportunity to be a mother. Because the whole freezing your egg thing, dude, the majority of women can't afford that. They can't afford to freeze their eggs. That's why you see the majority of these cat women and these crazy Karens and all that stuff going on. The majority of women can't afford to freeze their eggs, artificial insemination. I think freezing your egg, one egg I think it's over $10,000, you know what I'm saying? And then it might not even take when you return it. And another thing is, I know a lot of women are doing this, what they call that thing, surrogacy, whatever, you know what I mean? But not everyone can afford that either. So a lot of women are at the point where, you know what I mean? I plan to make a video from young woman to Karen. A lot of women are gonna become, it's only natural, they're gonna become a Karen eventually. But the thing is this, you're gonna have Karens and artificial Karens. Artificial Karens are really black women, minority women. You know what I'm saying? Artificial. But the thing that's gonna happen is a lot more women are gonna end up alone, because especially as the Casper thing grows, more men will start looking at decreasing the birth rate as a right in a game. They're gonna be, dude, we need to get the birth rate declined to 10%. Need to get it to 25%. Let's keep going. We gotta get it lower. It's gonna become a competition with men. So, and a right of brotherhood. It's gonna become a brotherhood thing where Caspers get together and say, "Oh, dude, you don't got a kid? Cool. Word. You're not married? Word. You the man. You're the man. You're my fellow Casper. You're the man." You know what I mean? So it's coming. But, like I said, I covered a lot on this video. This has been Hold the Truth Hostage. In fact, one more thing, like I said, the women will keep going viral, keep saying, why aren't the men approaching us? And they're going to get more depressed as they go towards Tinder and to seek out the men that won't approach them in the real world. And they're going to get depressed because a man can only legally spend time with one woman at a time. So Tinder's only going to remind more women that polygamy doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? As one man can't share them all. He has to go one woman to another, one woman to another. You know what I'm saying? Versus he could go with multiple. So a lot of women are going to learn the pain. Tinder's only going to further push the fact that polygamy must be legalized. That polyamory must be legalized. So, and the fact that the laws need to be reformed and fixed, because in the long run, this doesn't hurt men. There are more women than men, even as the birth rate decreases. Let's say it takes 10 years for the government to change the child support and the marriage laws, divorce laws, and welfare laws and all this stuff. That means there's over 10 years of women that lost their fertility window and will never have children, will never experience having a family. So in the long run, the men can wait it out. And the men have other options. They could take a flight. The men have other options. So the women now, it's up to them to basically reform the laws. And for some women, sooner than later, the women that just millennials that hit 30, you know what I mean? For some, it's sooner than later, you know what I mean? So a lot of them, that you're going to see a lot more women going angry, posting videos, anti-male videos, anger. You're going to see a lot more women virtue signaling, chameleons, simp hunters. You know, a lot of simp hunters in the comic and anime, community. You know, a lot of simp hunters in that. You're gonna see a lot more men go Casper. You're gonna see only man gaming tournaments pop up because legally it makes sense for protection and abuse. There's gonna be a lot. The Casper thing is going to spread. If you're not sure what I mean by Casper and you want more detail, I made a video called Casper. You'll see what I mean. But this has been Hold the Truth Hostage, where if the truth was so important, we would hold the truth hostage. And we would hold the truth hostage, not negotiate with lies. And when they attempt to take the truth from us, we would hold the truth hostage. Peace.